Podcast sponsors make the Joyfully Homeschooling podcast possible. So let's take a moment and thank one of this season's sponsors, Knotgrass History. For me, the thing that I love most about Knotgrass is that when it comes to textbooks versus literature, it truly is the best of both worlds. I have always been a fan of literature-based history, yet I love the ease of textbooks. Knotgrass History gives me both in a package together that my kids actually enjoy. Knotgrass History helps history learners become history makers. Knotgrass History curriculum combines narrative lessons that are easy to read and understand, primary source documents, real letters, songs, and stories from real people who lived in the past, historical novels and biographies that add richness and depth to the lessons, hands-on activities and projects for a variety of learning styles, and a Christian worldview that upholds the Bible as God's Word and honors Jesus as the Savior of the world. How many history programs can say that? Knotgrass has history, geography, and government curriculum for all ages. Their three newest products are our 50 States, a U.S. geography course for elementary students, an updated version of America the Beautiful, which is U.S. history for middle school, and Exploring World Geography, which is a high school course that teaches physical and human geography. Another resource from Knotgrass History is a web-based app called Homeschool History. It saves parents time and enhances learning for students with a searchable database of high-quality videos, virtual tours, games, and more, plus exclusive content. We have used so many of Knotgrass's courses through the years and have been absolutely blown away by each and every one of them, including Homeschool History. So, do you want to learn more about this amazing program? Visit knotgrass.com to get all the details and find out if Knotgrass History is right for your family. That's knotgrass.com to get all the details. Now, on with the podcast.
Welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast
with our mom,
Misty Bailey. Tips and encouragement
for
real-life homeschooling
is headed your way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I am Misty Bailey, your host here at the podcast, and can you believe that we are, I don't even know how many episodes now into this series, all about the different methods of homeschooling. I'm really enjoying it. I hope you are as well. I hope it's really opened your eyes and given you a peek into some of the different methods of homeschooling. So I really enjoy talking to these ladies, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to them. So how was life in homeschool and the liberty and pursuit of happiness? We are studying government right now with Gather Around Homeschool, and I've been asking my kids that a lot lately. How is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? But our pastor actually talked, about a month or two ago, was preaching a sermon, and he said we should stop talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and instead talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of holiness, because as Christians, we should constantly be striving to lead a more holy life. So we alternate back and forth between the two. But my kids have a whole new perspective on the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness after studying government, because we really hadn't touched on it much. My oldest did Uncle Sam and You from Knotgrass History a few years ago, and Kristen was supposed to do it this year before we switched to Gather Around, and so she's still doing it. I'm going through it some alongside Gather Around Homeschool. So this is really like our first big dive in to government. I did a unit study, an election unit study that I have had as a freebie before here on my store, and we had done that, but like as far as real strong government study, this is really our first dive into it all together as a family. And I have to say that I'm learning a lot, and right alongside my kids. And it's also helping me a lot because, as I talked about in an episode with Devon, I'm actually back in college myself studying marketing with a focus on digital and social media. And I have to take government because apparently the government I took when I went to college the first time around wasn't good enough. So I'm having to retake it. And I am enjoying the homeschool class a lot more than my online government class through college just being real here. My idea of government and the people I'm taking class with's idea of government are very, very different. And I may be one of the only conservatives in that class. So I'm really enjoying the government lessons from Gather Round much better than the ones I am taking in college. So anyway, just saying that. But I hope you guys are all doing well and enjoying this series on homeschool methods. So today I am talking with Dianna Kennedy about the classical method of homeschooling. And no, this episode is not all about classical conversations. I actually rolled my eyes a little bit. I didn't tell Dianna this, but I rolled my eyes a little bit when Dianna jumped in that she would talk about classical education, because I immediately assumed she'd be talking about classical conversations, because that is the only experience I have ever had with classical education was our local CC group. And I'm very thankful that they're in our community. I have nothing negative about them at all, but it's not really for me. And I talk about this some in this episode. So I was very happy to hear that Dianna breaks down the idea of classical education. And I actually really learned a lot from her and can see why so many people would want to take that method of homeschooling. And I was very happy to know that you can do it without being part of a classical conversations group, because that is not the idea that I have had from our local group, is that, you really have to be part of this classical conversations to have a classical education. So it was a really, really nice interview, and I really enjoyed it. And Dianna and I actually known each other online for many, many years, and I actually got to talk to her kind of in person, through video, which was really nice. So anyway, so who is Dianna Kennedy? She is the mother of 6, ranging from 6 to 25, with identical twins thrown in the middle. She's entering her 10th year of homeschooling this fall. She's working on her juggling act, working outside the home full-time, managing a chronic illness, and dealing with learning disabilities in her homeschool. You can find her practical tips for homeschooling and living the Catholic faith at thekennedyadventures.com. And as I said in this episode, Dianna and I chat the different classical curriculums, because there's a lot out there that I did not know of. We talked about how she works outside the home and still is able to homeschool. We talk about chunking out time, like chunking our days to where we're able to work with multiple ages. And so much more. And it's really, really a practical episode. Even if you don't plan on using the classical method of homeschooling, this episode is really just practical all around. And I think you guys will really enjoy it. So don't miss it. So let's move right on with my episode with Dianna Kennedy after a quick word from our sponsors. Podcast sponsors make the Joyfully Homeschooling podcast possible. So let's take a moment and thank one of this season's sponsors, Teaching Textbooks. Are you struggling with math in your homeschool? I get it, I do. Math used to bring tears to my children's eyes each and every day. You see, my kids learn differently than I could teach, and this made math a constant struggle. But then I found Teaching Textbooks. The lessons offered by Teaching Textbooks take much less time than the workbook lessons we used before. They are brief, hold my children's attention, yet also are effective enough to help my homeschoolers learn the material. Bonus, it takes math entirely off my plate. And guess what? Teaching Textbooks is coming out with a new and improved version of their already amazing program. Teaching Textbooks 4.0 will be releasing soon, and we cannot wait to try it out. It checks off all of the problem areas homeschool moms have with math. Grading, done. Hints to help out a student who is struggling? Yes. A teacher video for each and every problem? You bet. If math is a struggle in your home, I encourage you to check out Teaching Textbooks today. Head to findingjoyinthejourney.net/teaching textbooks to get a free trial of this amazing program. The independence and confidence Teaching Textbooks has given my children has made it the top choice for math in our homeschool. Here's that link again: findingjoyinthejourney.net/teaching textbooks. Be sure to get your free trial today. Now, on with the podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I am Misty Bailey, and I am here today with my friend, Dianna Kennedy. How are you today, Dianna?
Oh, I am thrilled to be here with you. This is going to be so much fun.
Oh, well, let's hope so. Hope it's fun for us and for everybody else. So, Dianna, before we jump in with talking about classical homeschooling, can you tell everybody a little bit about you and your homeschool?
Absolutely. So I am a mom of 6, ranging from 25 all the way down to 6. My oldest daughter was not homeschooled. She went to a combo of parochial school and public school. And then my 5 younger children, so I have a 14-year-old this fall, 12-year-old twins, identical twins, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. So we'll have 5 students this fall. And so they've been homeschooled from the very beginning. I also juggle working outside the home and having a chronic illness, and then also blog on the side as kind of a side gig. So we have many balls in the air here.
How do you have time to sleep, my friend?
Okay, so that is a great question. Now, and so if you asked me this question 4 or 5 years ago, I was the mom that was burning the candle at both ends and writing at 2 a.m. because there was a post that was due the next day. I do not do that anymore. So being diagnosed with a chronic illness actually has made me shift my priorities a lot. And sleep is one of those that is something that I actually hold very dear. So when you go to my site, I'm not the kind of person that is turning out content, once and twice a week. I'm more of a once a monther. Maybe it might be a couple months before I write anything new, but that's because I value my sleep, my health. My health comes first before anything else. Mm-hmm. Then after that comes homeschooling, and then my work outside the home job. So blogging is kind of way down on the list right now. But it's because it has to. I mean, that's the way it goes.
Well, I think that's important for any mom. We'll have to have you come back on the podcast and talk about working outside the home while homeschooling, because I think that's important for any mom, like just to kind of learn that balance. And you can't have all your balls spinning in the air at once because something's going to fall, and we don't want it to be the most important thing that's falling.
No, you are 100% right, and it took a health crisis to kind of make me realize, even though that I want to do it all, it's not physically or mentally possible. So
yeah. So, okay. So today we're going to talk about the classical method of homeschooling. And I found this topic very interesting because I only have one experience with the classical method of homeschooling. And I'm not going to share my experience yet. I'm going to wait and let you share yours. Because there's not a lot. Like, we live in a very rural area. And so everybody around here is pretty much traditional. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on the classical method of homeschooling. So can you tell us a little bit about what is the classical method of homeschooling?
Oh my gosh. So you're going to ask me the big question. So let me go back and kind of tell you, because it's a kind of a convoluted story with us. When it was time for my daughter, who is now a freshman, when it was time for her to go into kindergarten, we started looking around at some different schools, and I knew that I really didn't want to send her to public school because I didn't want to send her somewhere 5 days a week, full day. That was something that I felt pretty strongly about. We checked out a few other schools in our area, and I don't remember how we landed on this particular school. It's Highlands Latin School here in Louisville, Kentucky. And something that appealed to me tremendously was it was a parent partnership, meaning your kindergartner went to school 2 days a week. That's it. Nobody in the area did anything like that. And that sold me on it immediately. I didn't even look at the curriculum or the scope and sequence or anything like that. I simply looked at the fact of, that told me right off the bat, family is so important to these people. So we applied. We got waitlisted. I remember it a little bit differently than my husband. I remember it as we didn't get in at all, like we were banned. But my husband remembers it as, no, we got waitlisted. So our plan B was to use their curriculum. They actually write their own curriculum. It's a company called Memoria Press. So it's also here in Louisville. So we just jumped in, and I'm going to tell you, this is always so funny. I'm going to tell you, I was filled with hubris, and like literally, I said, "This is kindergarten. How can I screw it up?" I'm like, I have a plan here. I have things. Here's the curriculum. Here's the books. Here's lesson plans. Okay, what's the big deal, right? Jump on in. Let's go. So I did without any, and I was like, I think about that now. I'm like, that was so crazy, but it really, it really helped me not to like get distracted by all the shiny all around me, because otherwise I would have been like looking at everything like, what's the next greatest thing off the presses that I got to have today. So having that in front of me was so helpful, because I just jumped in and went without any thought, like jumping in the deep end of the pool, right?
Yeah.
So over the years, then I learned more about classical education, more about what it meant, kind of like more about like what the plan is. So if you think about it, I feel like it's difficult to describe. But so, one of our mottos, like, we teach the true and the good and the beautiful. So classical education is appropriate for any child. We actually have some kids here. Some of my children have some learning disabilities, and they are using Memoria Press just like everybody else does here, with some modifications. So we teach kids how to think. We teach them how to love. We teach them where they came from. So, like Western, you think about like Western Civ that we had in high school. Instead of our approach, like when I was in high school many years ago, we learned it in high school, right? We didn't know anything about ancient civilizations, way back in the day. They learn these things from early on, like 3rd, 4th grade. They start learning about these nations and people that shaped the world. So that's where we're kind of going back to, is that sort of thing. And it's age appropriate. They don't learn about things before they're ready. You kind of just like march them along. It's fun now to look at Rachel, because she's in high school, and the things that she's reading, we began to prep for that many, many years ago. Like they read Greek myths when they're 3rd grade. Later on, they study about the Greeks. They say the Greeks again, another like brief run through before they read Homer, like the Iliad and the Odyssey. So it's like, kind of like a hanging pegs approach. Like, here's your peg back here, because we're going to come back later and hang your coat on it. So it's a very traditional approach. Lots of literature, lots of writing, very teacher led. I'm the boss here. But it is a philosophy and a method that has just worked beautifully for us.
The only connection that I've ever had with classical education is with classical conversations.
Right. I figured you probably mentioned that.
Well, and it was crazy. And I'm not saying this. I'm not saying anything negative about classical conversations at all. Nothing. But there were some moms in our local area. Again, we live in a very rural area, and they just came in come to like a couple of our events and like kind of all stayed off by themselves and wanted to know if we wanted to start this classical conversations community. And I'm like, no, none of us are interested in that, but come hang out with us, do field trips with us, do these things with us. And they ended up kind of starting their own, and they've always stayed completely separate from any, like our other normal homeschool community. And so that kind of, if I'm honest, put me off a little bit on the classical method of homeschooling, which is one reason why I wanted you to come on. I never knew Memoria Press was a classical homeschool curriculum. I never knew that.
That's fun.
I literally thought the only thing was classical conversations.
Oh my gosh. So there are a million providers now, if you think about it. And then so let me go back actually. I know people that have started with CC and then moved to Memoria Press. kind of as they get older. Like in the younger grades, some people will do CC and Memoria Press together because they're doing CC for the community. They're meeting once a week. There's these, like their kids have friends, they do their thing, you know what I mean? But as you go up in the grades, there's not, and sometimes it matches up, like some of the stuff they're learning might coincide with Memoria Press things, but as you get up in the grade levels, and I don't even know what they call it over there, essentials or foundations or something.
A lot of those, yeah.
It's just too much. Like you have to decide, because I've seen a lot of people come, like in the Memoria Press forums or Facebook groups, and say things like, "Oh, but we really love our people here at CC, but I really like this better." And I just say, people, like, you're gonna have to make a decision one way or the other. You can't fence it just because there's not room for both. As you get up in the levels. So we use Memoria Press. I have friends that use pieces from Classical Academic Press. That's another classical provider. Gosh, let me think. The Searcy Institute. I don't know if they publish any kind of curriculums. Veritas Press. That's another one. There's a handful. Well-Trained Mind. So it seems like there's a little bit more. Maybe even, I think there's probably more than when I started. But maybe it's just also because I'm more aware.
Yeah.
Like if you buy a new car, then you see it, on the road everywhere.
Yeah.
So
well, we will leave links to all of those in the comments or in the show notes as well. But like I said, that was my only experience with it. And I was just like, just because we're not classical homeschoolers doesn't mean you can't attend a field trip with us.
Right.
And so I'm like, is that like everybody? And again, I'm not saying anything negative about nothing at all. I mean, the moms are great homeschool moms. I've talked to them throughout the years. I'm not saying anything negative at all, but it just seemed like they kind of got your own little community over here, and it was harder, you know what I mean? So anyway.
No, I feel like here in our area, so we have a homeschool, we have a cottage school, that our family utilizes. We've done that for how many years? 6, 7. And so we're taking some of these classes together in community with other homeschoolers. Now, some of these folks may not be classical educators. Like they might not be fine a classical model. They may just pop in for Latin, or they may just pop in for lit or science because they need to outsource this. But we have a really good community there. Now, I will tell you that the majority of the people that I run with in my area are classical homeschoolers, but it's kind of because it makes sense.
Yeah,
just because they understand kind of some of the struggles. Like, okay, we need to review Latin, and if I had an unschooling friend, they were like, I don't know why you're even doing that, right? I mean,
that's true. I guess that's true.
Yeah. You kind of stick with people that are kind of on the same path. I always tell people like homeschooling is an island, and then you classical homeschool, and then your island just got smaller.
Yeah,
that's some people just don't get it. So, but it's fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with me, because like I said, I was like, is this something that, but I mean, it sounds like if I lived in your community, we could still be friends.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
most definitely.
All right. So, okay, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but if you have anything to add to it, did you have anything else, like any other reasons why you chose this particular method of homeschooling?
Well, two reasons actually. So my husband went to, and so he tells me this like later on down the road, right? So we chose it initially, or I thought we did. We chose it initially because it was a plan B, and also because it worked. Because I have always worked outside the home during my homeschooling career, I needed something that was pretty well open and go. I absolutely did not have the mental energy or time to piece curriculum together, to write out lesson plans. Like, no, that was not going to be a thing for me. So I needed something that was pretty well open and go. Now, I do have teacher prep, but that's because I choose choose to make it so. Like I go through and, you know, like I may read, like pre-read some of the stuff that we're reading, like pre-read some of the novels, or make flashcards or something like that. So I need something that was already prepped and ready for me. So I call it a box curriculum, but I don't know that that's truly the right definition or not. You know what I mean? And another reason that we used it was because it works. Like if you ever, because it's highly touted. If you ever looked up, like if you ever looked up HLS, the test scores here, like ACT test, ACT, SAT, National Merit Finalist people, academically, like the scores are off the charts. That wasn't the only reason that we used it, but it was a bonus.
Yeah.
And we actually met kids that had been attending the school, and they were good people, able to interact with adults on a manner that was appropriate. Like they're not like super shy and not making eye contact, that sort of
not
thing.
Weirdos.
Does it sound crazy? Right. Yeah, not weirdos for sure. And then later on, my husband told me that he really felt strongly about a classical curriculum. And I kind of like fell over because like, oh, you never like shared that with me. Okay. He went to a small liberal arts college in Florida. And one of the first things he took in that school was Western Civ. And he fell out because he'd never learned this in the public school here. And he was astounded and felt like he'd been lied to all his life and didn't know, you know, like I said, where our civilization came from. You know, he didn't know all these things. So he felt strongly at that time that that's what he wanted. He wanted our children to know their history early on, and that was important to him.
That's awesome. That's very interesting because a lot of times the dads are really don't have much of a say.
No, he really does. He really doesn't. I mean, not that's like I'm driving the bus here, right? No, he is not involved in our day to day. But that's because I'm a control freak, number one, and
I understand
because
that.
because he's busy, right? Like he doesn't have time. He just kind of like now from time to time, like even like with this year, I will run things by him and say, listen, we are going to do X, Y, Z. What do you think about it? Do you think this is too much? Am I biting off more than I can chew? Because he has more of a bird's eye view, right? And he can look down and kind of see, okay, yeah, you're going to run yourself into the ground, lady. But yeah, so he's not, I do all the day to day. He's just kind of a support team. And I tell people that he's in charge of pop culture. You know, like my kids know all about the Beatles because of my husband.
Well, that's always a plus. And it is honestly though, in all seriousness, it is nice to have somebody that's willing to be like, look, you're going to run yourself into the ground. Because that goes back to what we first talked about at the beginning with the balance. And my husband holds me accountable on that a lot too. He's like, should you really be doing that?
No,
you know,
right. I tell people all the time, I need to sleep on it and check with my husband because they really can look at it. I hesitate to use the word emotionless, but they're not
objectively
often. Right, objectively, they're not often tied up in it, and they can look at it and kind of sweep all that emotion to the side and just kind of call a spade and see it for what it is. So that I appreciate him tremendously for that.
Yeah. So you kind of touched a little bit on the fact that your husband's not involved in your day-to-day homeschooling, but what does a day in the Kennedy homeschool look like?
You probably don't want to hear hot mess, do you?
I actually do. I think that every person listening right now probably wants to hear a hot mess because they're going to feel better about their hot mess.
Oh my, it is a little bit, so it's a little bit of a juggling act, and it always kind of changes from year to year. So this year I have 5 students, and so this will be the 5th year that I'm doing kindergarten, right? Oh, fifth time I'm doing kindergarten, which, right, like I should be like piece of cake by now, but I'm a little bit anxious because I feel like every year we add another layer to our homeschool. Like last year we brought one of my daughters, the youngest one, home from full-time school. Okay. She was at the full-time school, and so we brought her home. So I had to like adjust to that. So now I'm like adjusting because Daniel's going to be in kindergarten, and what do I do with all these people? Okay, so I'm actually going to work backwards, and I'll tell you like how what the end of my day is, and then kind of what it looks like in the middle. Okay, so because my brain only works for so long in the day, and I need a break. So I have a hard stop in my day about 2:30. Okay, so 2:30 or 2:30, maybe 3 o'clock if I'm having a really great day on it. I stop then. So that means whatever we didn't get to at that point, you're on your own. Like I'm not gonna, and my kids know. I mean, I just put like my hands over my eyes and go, I'm not talking to you because we're done. We're done with school today.
My work day is over.
Right, exactly. And by that point, I'm kind of like, I'm spent, really. Like, my basket is empty. Woo! And I need to go out. I need to get up and go do something physical. I need to wash the clothes. I need to do something, do dinner, like something that's not school related. So my hard stop, 2:30. So during the beginning and middle of the day, we kind of juggle people all along. So I'll start with the top and work our way down. My high schooler is fairly well independent, and honestly, the majority, well, let's not say all of her classes are outsourced, and they have been since about the 7th grade. Okay, so she takes some classes at the cottage school, some classes online. So basically, for her nowadays, I'm just a facilitator. So in her day to day, it's just kind of making sure, like, hey, do you have your stuff together? What can I do for you? It's just kind of like, do you need help from me? And if she does, she comes to me. And if not, we sail on. I do periodically check with her to make sure she's not, texting her friends all day while I'm doing other stuff. So
or browsing Pinterest for my kids, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. YouTube, Pinterest, whatever. The boys, so what I do, I chunk my instructional time together. So the boys so what I would do is, okay, so let's say we have, and also for them too, they are also outsourced for certain classes. I do a lot of outsourcing. So they have 4 classes that are outsourced. So we might start with the outsourced classes. Like, okay, let's start with Latin. Okay, grab your books, come to me. Let's work on this. What do you need help with? Let's review. And I have them save all of their independent work until the end of the day. Or maybe at the end of the day, they can't be doing independent work if I'm working with them. So if I am sitting down and saying, okay, it's time for Latin, you're going to do Latin with me, or else you missed your chance, you're on your own. Because now while I'm waiting for you to finish your Latin workbook, now I've got the 3rd grader and we're doing Greek myths or whatever that we need to do with her. So it's kind of like the top level, like I said, the freshman's out of the picture because I don't have to do a whole lot with her. But it's like all these things. So like spelling words, any kind of copy work, like things like that for my early elementary and middle school kids, they have to do those on their own because I can't like suck up my day watching you write out your spelling words because that's just, it's not a good use of my time. So I do that. Daniel will be new to the mix this year, so you have to check back with me in 6 months and see how that's going. My 3rd grader actually is my early bird. She gets up before anybody else, and she's fairly motivated. So I have been known to work on her stuff before the boys ever even get out of bed. So it's a lot of back and forth. We actually don't combine a whole lot of classes. So it's me just kind of juggling plates all day long, which sounds crazy, but I mean, that's just
homeschooling. So, you call it chunk time. I call it like block scheduling, you kind of have your block and, you've got your kids and all these different blocks. So like my day runs like, and I'm not classical homeschooling, but it still works. My day would run like in 4 different blocks. And so it's like, I might have child 1 and 2 in blocks where they're independent. So child 3 gets me for that block and they kind of know how their block works. And that's a really good way to manage multiple kids, regardless of the method of homeschooling that you use.
Oh no, I totally agree. And but it involves training too. Like you have to train your kids, and trust me, they have whiffed before and not, and lost out. Like, but I needed you to talk to me about this, blah 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 blah. And I said, I'm sorry, it's 2:30. You know that at 2:30 we are done. But it just takes a minute. I said, next day, come back and see me tomorrow. Like, when we're back on track here. So it's a little bit of training, and then some kids do better with it than others. I mean, you know how that goes. Some are a little bit more self-motivated, and some kind of get the picture better than others. I have one son who knows basically that when his work is done for the day, he gets to do what he wants. So he's on it. He will pound it out because he wants to go do his own thing. So
yeah. And I didn't realize, this is something else I didn't know about classical homeschooling. So you do outsource. So does Memoria Press offer like online classes?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
We do. We've done the online academy starts at about the 3rd grade. I don't know that I would recommend it for a 3rd grader. We did some online classes with our cottage school back in the spring, when all the schools shut down, and my oldest and my big guys, they were fine, no problem. They were used to that kind of stuff. It was not a big deal. Maeve was 2nd grade, and her schedule was truncated. She wasn't there. She wasn't, in class time all day, but she had a heck of a time staying on task and staying focused. And she's changing her Zoom screen to galaxies and all this different stuff. Yeah. So just because it says 3rd grade, you really have to think about the maturity level of your kid. Like, can they sit in class for an hour? I mean, like online, and because there's a different layer of paying attention, because there's lots of distractions, right? You have a teacher on the screen, you got a chat box over here, like you can be chatting over here, and so I don't think a lot of kids at 3rd grade are able to manage that, or at least not mine. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've talked some about these resources, but I want to give you the opportunity to share anything else. If somebody's coming to you like, hey, I know nothing about classical homeschooling, where would I start? What kind of resources would you recommend for those parents? Okay,
excellent. I have a book that I've read that I would recommend for people.
I thought you wrote a new book that I'm like, I didn't
know. No, right. In my spare time, all the time I have in the world. Simply Classical, A Beautiful Education for Any Child. It was written by my friend Cheryl Swope, who is with Memoria Press. Cheryl wrote the Simply Classical track for Memoria Press, which is for kids with special needs, learning disabilities, kids that are medically fragile. It takes the Memoria Press curriculum. The book is standalone. It's the story of her children and what classical education did for them, and then it's also a good explanation about classical education. And then the curriculum is standalone. So that might be important for people who have kids with special needs who think, there's no way I can do this. But the answer is yes, you can. The resources are there for that. So I definitely recommend that book to anybody, even if regardless of whether your kids are neurotypical or have issues. I would say that regardless. Years ago, I read The Well-Trained Mind, like one of the first editions. And I like that too. I don't follow the philosophy behind it, but I think that's a good one. Another thing that I do is I pore over the forums at Memoria Press. So that was another reason that we stuck with this curriculum. They have an amazing just a bevy of support on their forums. So the forums are moderated by the staff, obviously, but it's also filled with moms that have used it for years and years. So veteran moms, new moms, homeschool dads, whoever. So it's a great place to go. Like, you could go and lurk and just read and kind of investigate things and find out. That's probably where I would look if somebody was looking.
Okay.
to find out a little bit more.
And I had one more question that I meant to ask earlier. So you said you cut your day off between 2:30 and 3. What time do you guys normally start your day?
Oh, it varies. In my brain, I would love to start at 8 a.m., but that never seems to work for us. We're probably about 9:30 because my kids, so I have older kids, right? So they like to stay up a little bit more. We live in the South, so it's hard to get kids so this time of year, it's not dark until about 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids are really, they balk tremendously at coming in and going to bed anytime, like when it's light outside. So in the winter time, we start a little bit earlier because we can go to bed earlier. But, in this early part of the year, it's a little bit rough.
Okay. I didn't want people to think, well, she does school until 2:30, 3 o'clock and starts with all of her kids at 8 o'clock in the morning, because that would make for a really long day.
No.
Okay.
So general rule of thumb for us is and it's hard for me to say because people ask me all the time, how long is your homeschool day? And I say, oh gosh, I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because I have different kids starting at different times. Like I said, my third grader couldn't start early. I mean, she's been known to get started at 7:30 because she was up, and I'm strike while the iron's hot, right? So she may start and get done before her brothers, or even anywhere meandering in the kitchen.
Yeah. Okay. So Dianna, the last question I had for you is one I ask all my podcast guests, and that is, how do you find joy in your homeschool day, your hot mess mama day? How do you find your joy?
Okay. See, and that's a hard question. Because this year is rough, girl.
I know.
I kind of feel like it's sucking the life out of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For us, finding joy in my homeschool day is remembering why we do this.
Mm-hmm.
I think about my friends, I used to. I think about my friends who had people in the public school. I'm with my kids all day long, and I get to teach them how to read, okay? Even though sounding out CBC words for months is not any fun, right? It's a heck of a lot more fun now when they're reading King Arthur. I mean, that's amazing, but the early days are hard, but it's fun to be able to watch them grow, to have deep conversations about the things they're reading, about the things that they're learning, and applying that to today's life. So what brings me joy is spending time with my kids. And it sounds a little bit trite, but that's why I'm doing this.
Well, and do you feel that, I think that's one of the reasons, it's not why I started homeschooling. I didn't start homeschooling because it's I can't wait to teach my kids to read CBC words and to, spend all this time with them. It wasn't why, but I think it's something, especially as your kids get older, you learn to treasure that a little bit more, and it keeps you into why you homeschool.
Absolutely. No, because I have thought about this as of late, because I think, so I have an adult daughter. She's gone out of house. She's been gone for a while. So now I have my 14-year-old, and I thought about this the other day. I'm like, she's only going to be here for 4 more years. And on one hand, you go, 4 more years, that's so long. But I know that goes by, in a flash. So it's really neat, and it's fun to watch them become young adults. And you're just wow, I played a pretty big part in that. That's so fun. So
yeah, they're pretty good kids. That's what I tell mine when I look at mine. I've got some pretty good kids that I actually like to spend time with, which in itself is a blessing.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah. So, okay, Dianna, this has been so much fun. And can you tell everybody where they can find and connect with you?
Oh, I am fairly easy. The website that I have is The Kennedy Adventures. So that's www.thekennedyadventures.com. You can also find me on Instagram, and it is easy too. It's just at Dianna Kennedy, Dianna, and then Kennedy.
All right, and we will leave links to all of these as well in the show notes. So, my friend, thank you so much. I love hearing your accent. I'm right across the river in Ohio, and we don't have that accent here. So, well, you have a wonderful day, my friend.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been an episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to leave a rating or review on iTunes or whatever platform it is that you use to listen to this podcast. That tells the powers to be I'm not talking to myself. Also, hit subscribe. Then you will catch every episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast each week right there in your podcast feed. You can find show notes and more at joyfullyhomeschooling.com and clicking on the episode number of the episode you are looking for. Thanks, guys. I hope this podcast encouraged you to head out there and have a more joyful homeschool.